I just made a contract with myself that I would get myself to my desk every morning, have some coffee, try not to eat too much, and and keep working, or at least to sit there and wait for something to come into my head until I had to go to my job, which was usually at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And then on the weekends I went a little longer. Um, but you know, it's I think that's kind of a modest plan in any one day. But if you can do it every day over a period of years, you really accumulate a whole lot of work. Um, so I suppose that my hope is to have a very simple life, so that I can allow my work to be as complex as it wants to be. I'm not trying to write anything complicated. I'm just trying to make uh, to observe the world and my characters um, as they are. And I think people are complicated, and our emotions are complicated, and even very simple sensual scenes are complicated insofar as the choice of the right word is very difficult to do. So I mean, there's nothing special about my way of doing things. It's it's probably slower than other people's, but that's okay with me. I studied philosophy and math, um, a lot of other things in school. In a way, philosophy posed an interesting problem for this book, because I mean, there are philosophical problems that are at the heart of a lot of my characters, but the material of a novel is not an idea. It's never ideas. The material of a novel is sensory experience. And those things can be really in conflict um, when you're trying to write fiction. Um, I had a teacher who infuriated me when I was in graduate school, who said to us, "Ideas are a dime a dozen," which means that they don't, they're cheap. Um, and having been a philosophy student, I thought ideas are the most important, most real, most important things. But in a way, for a fiction writer, ideas take you away from sensory experience. And the material of a novel is what you can see and smell and taste and feel, and so on. So the study of philosophy, in some way, it's a it's a it's a good competitor for a fiction writer. It keeps what you're doing serious, but you mustn't let the language of philosophy overtake the language of literature, because the language of philosophy is abstract, and literature must be material, it must be concrete. One of the most important skills to learn is which advice to take and which advice to put aside. And I had went to a workshop program in graduate school when I was younger, and I had people. I've met some people who were really great readers for what I was doing. They understood what I was doing. They were sympathetic with what I was doing, and they could tell me what they thought I was doing wrong, and that was really useful, obviously. There were other people who sometimes liked what I was doing, but they were still not helpful to me in the sense of just not being the right reader for what I was doing. I think it's important to, people can give you advice about changing what you're doing. And our egos sort of naturally rebel and against and reject any kind of advice that says what you're doing is not quite right. You should go this way. But to the extent that you can, I think it's helpful to sit with contrary advice for a few days at least. Let your emotions cool down and then come back to it. It might not be right for you, but it might be right, and you can't let your pride, obviously, get in the way. Okay, I talk a lot, and I know this is my fault. So I have the system that I use in the workshop is that a student will submit a story, say, and everyone will read it ahead of time and make their notes and on the page, and then also write a letter to the writer. The form is of a letter to the writer about their experience of reading the story. And I make a point usually of I have the writer read a little bit out loud at the beginning of the class. And then we go around the table. It's always a circular table. And each student says his or her own mind, speaks his or her own mind, uninterrupted by anybody else. When they're done, it goes to the next person and all the way around. Once everyone has spoken, then there's group discussion. So in this way, you know how seminar conversations can sometimes get crowded out by the loudest voices, which would especially be mine. I don't talk until the end. I wait. I try very hard to not talk because I don't want the students to be responding primarily to me. I might not be the best reader for that student's work. It's very likely. So I want to give as much possibility for all the individual voices to speak themselves, and then also to have the group discussion where there's more of an exchange. And then at that point, I come in with questions, and then later on, I'll come in with more of my own point of view. And I have to say, it's much more pleasing to me that way. I learn a lot more by sort of making myself just sit there and listen for 45 minutes to what the students are saying. I have a large stack of sloppy paper on my desk that keeps getting higher. I don't seem to be going any faster than I did before. I've been writing some stories, but I really am utterly irresponsible in the sense that I have no plans ahead of time. I just sit down and I describe what my unconscious tells me, and I try as long as I can to hold on to just describing what's coming out without the need of organizing things. And it's only once I have something on paper that I can start to move it around and decide what was relevant and what was irrelevant. So I end up throwing a whole lot away. But I hope to write novels for the rest of my life. I mean, this is it's probably sentimental to say, but I feel the feeling of having a vocation is a great comfort. I can allow any number of things to go all catawampus, things can go crooked and crazy in regular life, but if you know what your life is for, that's home base, as we say, like in American baseball. It's the place that you start from and go back to. So even though I'm writing an essay here or there and stories here or there, the novel is really where I want to be.